how
I think
great he
Trump
can
is. I think
and be
Trump is narcissistic. I think he's just self-interested. What's you?
Hassan, how
You
can you
asked me.
ask someone like me? How can you ask someone like me or the average voter to believe that when I think he's quite literally the only president in U.S. history who left the office poorer than when he entered.
Yeah, he's really bad at
Like,
business. Like it's not even funny. I've been a Democrat my entire life until today. Trump's America over Biden's America, and it's not really close. No, FaZe Banks, we lost him. We lost FaZe Banks, dude. We lost him. We were tricked into believing if we voted for Trump last election, we were bad people. Not again. At least not me. Sorry. I'm looking strictly at the facts. Fact is, inflation is at an all-time high. The US dollar has lost nearly 20% of its buying power in the last 4 years. I cannot express how alarming and scary this is. And for the first time in US history, the next generation of Americans will most likely be worse off than we were. First of all, no, that's not the first time in the next generation of Americans will be most likely worse off than we were. What? Brother, you're in the generation that is worse off. Like, you individually are not worse off than your parents, but like our generation is already worse off than our parents in terms of, you know, not being able to retire, not being able to buy a house, that kind of thing. Illegal immigration has gotten so bad that even people furthest on the left have conceded it to being a major issue. You have Kamala Harris in 2024 before GTA 6 talking about building a wall at the southern border. I rest my case on the Kamala Harris border initiative, by the way, right there. Yeah, I told you. Dudes who spell border with an A, gonna see Kamala Harris be like, oh, I'm the border candidate. And they're gonna go, okay, well, I guess I'll just go with the border guy instead. Listen, man, I understand the average dude, okay? I, in many respects, am an average dude. I hang out with average mindset dudes all the time. Please understand when I tell you, when Kamala Harris goes out and is like, I am the border czar, I am the border police, people are going to be like, oh, like even she's agreeing that the border is a problem. I remember vividly this being one of the left's biggest talking points, pushing Trump's racist narrative before before he was even elected. Now all of a sudden, 8 years, 10 million people crossing the border. Oh my God, he wrote border with an A again. Everyone is also on the same page. Now it's a problem. It's just one of many examples demonstrating the Democratic Party's glaring hypocrisy. Trump's the first president of recent history where there were no new wars started during his term. Between Russia and Ukraine and everything else that's happening in the Middle East is looking like World War III is right around the corner. Democrats have become the party of censorship. Democrat has become the party of censorship, twisting words and winning at all costs. Several attempts have been made against Donald Trump's life in an effort to silence them. JFK and Abraham Lincoln were murdered because they were atypical politicians. Wait, what? JFK and Abraham Lincoln were murdered because they were atypical politicians that challenged the powers that be. America first, food for thought. Okay, Ronald Reagan survived an assassination attempt. This doesn't mean anything. What is going on? Typically, I wouldn't care one way or another, but this seems to be the most important by far election of my lifetime. Dude, they're so libbed up, dude. Yo, Republicans are so libbed up. This is why I still don't think Trump is going to win, by the way. Because, like, this message is so... This is the most important election of our lifetime. If you phase the up, you got to vote for Donald Trump. Oh, my God. No, this is not satire. Also, I don't think he's going to end up voting. Watch the most recent Joe Rogan podcast featuring Elon Musk, both historically Democrat, for more information as to why. Notice Trump/Vance's willingness to answer questions in the total silence on the side of Harris/Waltz. Again, food for thought. Okay, can I just say, FaZe Banks' entire summarization is everything I've told you about a specific type of guy. A guy, I wasn't referencing him when I was talking about like my apolitical voters who are like low propensity voter friends. Like, but he fits that bill so perfectly. Okay? Kaya, you know it's place time, baby. The hell is this? I don't care, still face up. Oh, me too, brother. Please, whatever decision you make, ultimately, just please make the decision to vote. Oh my God, he's so libbed up. He's saying like, no matter who you vote for, just vote. I'm done with this country, bro. What Elon Musk, Beyonce, or Taylor Swift have to say, at the end of the day, we're all rich. And we'll be fine. Wait, what do you mean we're all rich, bro? Is he just talking to other members of FaZe? Like, can you survive in America where milk is $20 a gallon? That's the question to ask yourself. Austin is freaking out about the FaZe Banks endorsement right now. Dude, oh my God. The FaZe Banks endorsement is pivotal. It's shocking the world. I mean, it's not very shocking, but it still has a tendency to shock the world. All right, I'm calling him right now. convert our brother? No, I will not be. I mean, I'm going to talk to him about it. I'm going to pick his brain, but I don't think I can convert him. Oh, he said 2 seconds. Hello, can you hear me? Oh, okay.
Is this better?
It's better. It's better.
Because that call answered on my phone and my laptop at the same time. What's good? How are you?
I'm good. We have oh wait, I can hear myself. I don't know why. Okay, now I don't hear myself. Okay. I'm good. I was literally about to be done with the stream, but then I got your text message, and as someone who has been phasing up for as long as I've known myself, I was shocked. I wouldn't say I was shocked necessarily about your endorsement, but I was a little distraught personally. Connor Eats Pants wanted you to know that there are people out there who are still pro FaZe and pro Kamala Harris.
Well, that's amazing. I'm happy that we live in that version of America.
Yeah, he said, please remind him I love FaZe Clan and Kamala. We exist. That's what he said.
I'm obsessed with Connor. I love you. Unironically got you an American flag for your birthday. Don't know if you remember that Rick Owens flag.
I do remember. It used to be behind me, but we moved it away. But I got to bring it back now. Now it's even worth more because it's been given to me by a real American patriot.
FaZe Banks.
Yeah, there's some people in the chat that are saying they lowered their FaZe symbol for a second when they saw you endorse Donald Trump.
Listen, that's okay. Listen, let me preface all jokes aside. Let me just preface all this by saying never in a million years did I think I'd be on a Hasan live stream talking about politics. I'm not a political guy. The entire time we've known each other for how long now?
It's been years. Right? Yeah,
years. And I don't think we've ever touched base on anything in the world of politics. I'm not one to even like get out and go vote or endorse one side or the other either way. Typically don't give a and when it comes to like dabbling in like coming to like my own conclusions and consuming like political content, it's typically via, and I know this is gonna kill you, but Destiny, yourself, typically like I find it more interesting to watch like the more like left leaning.
So it seems like neither of us were able to convince you.
I'll like dabble in like Charlie Kirk and stuff too, but again, preface like the fact that I think his views and like his take on like abortion and stuff like that are insane. I think he's like a little too like God Christianity heavy. That's just like my like general like normie.
No wrong answers. No wrong answers in this situation. I'm just
my biggest thing for you and how I came to this conclusion is really this. It's just like, again, like I said in the tweet, it's just there are some like glaring like hypocrisies on the left that I've noticed over I guess the biggest thing, like the biggest takeaway from that tweet, I would say, and like how I feel is just duped and like tricked. Obviously the left played heavily into like identity politics and, you know, took a more like emotional, like stance and angle, all things considered, I would say.
What do you mean by that?
Like, just like, you know what I mean? Like the narratives, like I said, the narrative of Trump being a racist because
you don't think Trump is a racist?
Before he was even elected, I don't think that Trump's a racist for the reasons that are typically like pushed via the left. No, I don't.
Like, what do you like? As in,
I don't think Trump's any more racist than Joe Biden is.
Okay, I don't. Well, to be fair, I don't fully disagree with you. I think that Donald Trump is individually a racist and was just as racist at the time when Joe Biden was like writing racist legislation in the early 90s and the 80s. I mean, he took an ad calling for the execution of the Central Park Five in the New York Times. His real estate properties that him and his father owned have been routinely investigated by federal authorities like far before he ever became a television personality, listen, for like not housing black people.
All these 4 points and specific examples you'd give me, there'd be always somebody on the right who would give me an equal number of bullet points and examples as to why Joe Biden's more of a racist.
No, I'm not telling you Joe Biden's not racist. I think Joe Biden.
That's what I'm saying though. It's as far as like the racist narrative, I would say it's a zero-sum game where that narrative is pushed heavily by the left.
Also, Biden is not running for president right now. It's Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris is, and Kamala Harris just sat in office as the vice president for 4 years.
But that's just what vice presidents do, really. It's not really it's more so a symbolic position.
That must be what Joe Biden did too, because Joe Biden can't even stand up straight.
I don't even disagree with that.
Joe Biden knows who's running for president right now. So in that case, who the is the president? Who's running shit?
So in many instances, I think, and Trump is a little bit unique on this, but in many instances, I think like people don't just simply vote for the person; they vote for the administration. And oftentimes, it's not like George W. Bush is a great example of this. Like George W. Bush was a Republican, right? And he was a overall dumb guy, and he was basically like the shadow president under his administration was Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney was basically running the entire show. But the president can sometimes be basically just a figurehead that is the placeholder for the administration, the entirety of the administration, the people that he hires. I think that.
So then, in that case, what does any of it matter, right? I guess I would say it's kind of the same.
Well, when you advocate for a president, I think
kind of a zero-sum game at that point.
No, I think when you advocate for a president, you're definitely advocating for not just the individual themselves, but you're advocating for the legislation that the president is going to advocate for, and also the agencies.
Again, that's why in my tweet I highlighted inflation and border security as border with an A, security as heavily as I do.
So
again, it's crazy to me because Hasan, I know you were obviously there. This is your whole livelihood and your whole career is rooted and based in politics. So obviously you were there through it and you consumed a lot more of it than somebody like I would.
Yeah, and I was very critical of Kamala Harris's decisions and also the Biden administration's decisions, especially when it comes to right-wing border, all the right-wing border stuff that they were talking about. As a matter of fact, something that you pointed out in your tweet, the perceived hypocrisy of the Democratic Party saying that Trump is racist for a border wall, and then continuing to try and fund a border wall themselves, and then claim Trump is the hypocrite for not pushing for the border wall because it's the Democrats advocating for it. That is actually double hypocrisy. Like Trump is being hypocritical for saying, I don't want that border bill to pass through because I don't want to give the Democrats a W on this. But you're right. The Democrats are being hypocritical when they say that.
Listen, again, don't get me wrong. I'm not like a huge pro-Trump guy. And in terms of like dividing the country in half and just like being pretty bad in terms of like how, just general morale and the way that people interact with each other, conversations like this happening. I think Trump is probably the worst president in history. But
so you're saying he's more divisive? Like Trump has created more divisiveness in the country?
I don't think necessarily by his own fault or that's his own intention. But again, he's been demonized from the left in the like the traditional media since before he was elected. Like you just said, the general response to his build the wall, remember that mantra, build the wall before, I'm pretty sure that was his slogan before even MAGA was a thing, right? This is very, very early. And these were like the earliest conversations where the opposing side claimed that was a racist thing to say, was to build a wall. You want to build a wall? You don't like Mexicans?
Yeah, personally said it was racist and stupid, and then she advocated to build
Kamala Harris in an interview a week ago was talking about how we need to build more wall. 8 years later,
I agree with you. I think it's unimaginably hypocritical. If you ask me what my
this guy had to endure 8 years of being labeled, bastardized, demonized, called a racist. And it's a snowball, right? It starts with that, and then one thing leads to another, and it becomes his entire brand that's pushed by traditional media and by the left, right? For 8 years, and then the left, it becomes such an issue. 20 million people crossing the border later. Now it's undeniably an issue.
That's also not true. Those numbers aren't correct.
How much is it? What was it last year?
I don't know what the exact number of like border apprehensions or border crossings are, but the border apprehension number is not necessary in this conversation.
A lot more than Trump.
Yeah, a lot of that is immigration overflow from COVID, but like once post-COVID, once the post-COVID border shutdown was put aside, a lot of people that were waiting.
I'm sure there's like a fluffy, nice way to frame, like a left way to frame it.
No. Like, I'm not giving you a left-wing framing. I'm just telling you exactly what happened. I am not in favor of Kamala Harris's border policies at all. I just want to be clear. I'm certainly not in favor of Donald Trump's border policies. I think they're racist, and I think that they are silly. And the reason why I think they're racist and silly, if you don't mind me explaining, is because the idea that undocumented migrants constitute a threat to America is the underlying premise for why we need a wall, right? We need to secure our nation, right? That's the idea, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that premise is false. Undocumented migrants are directly contributing to the American economy in incredibly meaningful ways. Undocumented migrants actually put more into our tax revenue than they take out. They are not able to take advantage of our social safety nets. They pay into Social Security. They can't take out of Social Security. They are not a burden they're not a burden on the economy. They're actually greatly beneficial to the American economy. And not only that, but also Donald Trump takes it one step further and he lies all the time. And I'm very upset with the Democratic Party for allowing Donald Trump to lie on this issue and even concede to this lie. The idea that immigrants constitute a national security threat, that immigrants are bad and scary and they're rapists and they're murderers. These are the types of things that Donald Trump says regularly. If you've ever listened to his rhetoric on the matter, he'll often say this thing that is just completely false. He'll say, undocumented migrants kill hundreds of thousands of Americans a year. I'm sure you've heard this before from him. Have you?
I do think that the right wildly exaggerates like the impact that undocumented immigrants have on the U.S.
It's not even a wild exaggeration.
That's not to say I don't think it's an issue though. I think again, like your framing of it, for every bullet point you can. I'm not going to pretend to be like an expert on the economy and all the moving parts of the economy and how immigrants.
No, I have debated this issue with right wingers, including I've debated this issue with the right wingers. They're just wrong.
There's going to be points on the right side.
No, right wingers do try to put counterclaims against what I'm saying, but my information is not coming from my information isn't like cherry pick data. It's just coming from the Department of Homeland Security and Customs and Border Patrol data. So it's not like there's a lot of studies conducted on this.
Speaking of actual government data, and speaking of immigrants, another point that I saw highlighted on the Joe Rogan, Elon Musk interview that was just had was the relocation of immigrants, undocumented immigrants, specifically to swing states. And Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, who have historically been Democrats throughout the majority of their lives, are now
people's attitude changes throughout time.
For
That's
sure.
normal.
I'm just making it a point because it's an interesting point to make. They seem to think that this could be like the last real election that we have, just because of all the all of the undocumented immigrants being located, like flown in via airplanes to swing states.
So what they're talking about is actually really funny for a couple different reasons. One, because Elon Musk was an undocumented migrant originally and he lied on his immigration forms. So technically he is directly the actual party that is doing the crime that he's accusing others of. But beyond that, the idea that undocumented migrants are being purposely flown to swing states is completely incorrect. But even if it was correct, it still wouldn't matter. And the reason why it wouldn't matter is because undocumented migrants cannot vote. Undocumented migrants cannot vote. It's illegal for undocumented migrants to vote. They would be risking deportation by giving the government their name and address.
Illegal for undocumented migrants to cross the border in the first place. So
what's up?
And a state
for sure,
a state like California, where you and I both live, it's illegal for them to ID people at voting, right?
You still would need to have a residence, and you would need to have a name associated with your residence that you're giving to the federal government.
You don't need any hard proof or any hard identification with you at voting, correct?
No, you still need a established residence and a name associated with your residence, and also they even do signature checks. So technically, you would still need to have like a signature in the DMV that they can. I mean, I have my voter ballot in front of me right now.
Come on.
So they still do signature matching.
Yeah, but the whole thing with California is making it easier for people to vote, making it easier for people in lower classes to vote, and that's the whole argument, right? Is asking people to present an ID.
Banks, I'm asking you, do you think that someone who has come in here into the country illegally to work, right? Not for some like nefarious purpose of like wanting to vote for Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or whatever. Do you think that they're going to, one, illegally register to vote and offered their place of residence voluntarily to the federal government and the local state government, specifically for the purpose of voting?
No, I don't. Not necessarily, right? I'm not going to pretend like I do know one way or the
Okay.
other. But
Would you be shocked to find out if I were to tell you?
It poses the question to me: why relocate them to those states specifically in such large
There is
numbers?
no mass relocation happening. I don't know where this is coming from. The only type of relocation that has ever occurred was under the Biden administration, where Republican governor of the state of Texas, Greg Abbott, and the Republican governor of the state of Florida, Ron DeSantis, actually started, in an effort to make this a political problem for other states, they actually started a mass relocation process where people that were seeking asylum legally, which means that they have to be illegally inside of the U.S. boundaries to be able to start the process of seeking asylum, would be forcibly relocated to New York, Chicago, and a couple different areas. They were flown out. They were first bused, and then they were flown out. This technically is illegal. It would constitute for human trafficking. I was very upset with the Biden administration for not prosecuting the Republican state governors because he did not want to appear too partisan on the issue. The sole purpose of this process, and these people were, they had their court dates. They were supposed to go to, they were supposed to start the fast tracking of their processing so that they could potentially get TPS, temporary protected status, or maybe have their asylum claims denied. But instead, they were falsely told that they could have their asylum claims, processed in places like Chicago and New York, specifically because they wanted to create a political problem within blue states, within blue cities. Now, the real issue in this circumstance was that there was, I believe, around 85,000 to 100,000 undocumented migrants that were shipped to these other places without prior knowledge from the other places. Like, we have enough money. We're the wealthiest nation on earth. We have enough money to take care of these claims. We have enough money to even house all of these people if we wanted to. We don't do so, but regardless, it doesn't matter. We have all of the initiative. We have all the money to do so. But Greg Abbott was, in an effort to win a political argument, sending these people over to up that process deliberately, and it was pretty successful in disrupting, at least to a certain degree, normal process on the immigration front, and it became this like big political football, big political back and forth with hundreds of thousands of real human beings, basically in legal limbo as a direct consequence of this. So there was no initiative from like the Democrats of like shipping migrants in the swing states or whatever. That's not real.
Well, it was highlighted on that show, and
I know, but people just say stuff. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean it's real.
How that information is readily available on a government official website. Again, I'm sure there's somebody on the right who would.
But we can look it up together if you want. I can. Hey, mods, can you take it off of emote mode? I want to see if someone can send me a link on it. Maybe there's something that I might have missed. But overall, the question that I have remains, which is that there is no purpose of sending these undocumented migrants over to other states for like any nefarious reason beyond the fact that there is probably more need for labor in these states. Like Springfield, Ohio was a big point of contention for a lot of people. If you remember when, Donald Trump was falsely saying that Haitians are eating cats and dogs. You remember that?
Oh, I do remember that. Yeah.
So that was obviously very racist and bull, right? So
I think both sides are insane sometimes, for sure.
Yeah. So the Republicans were just like making that shit up completely.
I would say socially, I'm left leaning, and for everything else, I'm typically like in the center. I don't really not really passionate one way or the other. Obviously, you're super hyper passionate on one side, and that's why I wanted to talk to you specifically. Again, like we're going really, really deep into this immigration stuff. I'm not, again, super passionate. I'm not going to pretend like I know a ton about that. Again, the glaring part that like swayed me more to the right, more for Donald Trump in this specific conversation, this specific topic, was the fact that, the left had a lot to say about Trump.
The left is wrong. The left can be wrong. I mean, they're not even the left. Liberals, the Democratic Party is wrong.
And it would have been a little bit different if their response initially was a little bit more relaxed and like less aggressive and less like you're a racist because this is what you believe, and to walk that back all the way to the point where now you're on the same side of the
Yeah, I think
situation.
it's. I think they were correct in their initial assessment of saying that lying about immigrants and saying that undocumented migrants constitute a national security threat, that they're doing like all these crimes.
That's how you feel about their opinion 8 years ago, but now that's not what it is. So you could see how somebody like me would be.
No, I do, which is why I've criticized the Kamala Harris campaign quite a bit and the Democratic Party quite a bit since October 5th, 2023, I believe, when Joe Biden actually unveiled the right-wing border bill as a bill that they wanted to pass.
That's another big bullet point of why I just publicly endorse Trump and why I'd like to see Trump win tomorrow, the next day. Is just Kamala Harris in general. I'm not like super hyped. I don't think that she's necessarily qualified to be the president. She didn't.
You don't think she's qualified to be a president?
I don't.
I don't even like Kamala Harris, by the way, but I do think that she's definitely qualified to be president, especially in terms of who she's running up against. I don't think Donald Trump was qualified to be president. I think that someone who was the Attorney General of California.
Donald Trump at least won the Republican primary, right?
Yeah, but Kamala Harris had more bona fides than Donald Trump ever did in terms of like her track record. She was the Attorney General of California. California is literally a fucking
mess.
Yeah, California is basically
California's a dumpster fire. It's trash.
California is not a dumpster fire and trash. California is the 5th largest economy on the planet. It is literally individually a state. It is actually not just a state. It is one of the largest states.
I'm talking about aesthetically, physically trash. You traveled.
Okay.
Right? You've been around the U.S. You've been all around the U.S.
I have been all around the United States and I've been all around the world. California, by size, by GDP, is literally a country, and not just any country, but like I believe one of the largest economies on the planet. So California Attorney General is a pretty solid position, but beyond that, she was also a senator. I believe now it's the 4th largest economy in the world, simply California alone. But I think that being the Attorney General of California, being a senator from the state of California, is pretty good qualifications in terms of like having enough experience to run for the highest office. Donald Trump, on the other hand, was a reality TV star and had 6 bankruptcies under his belt when he ran for president. And I didn't hear people, I mean, I'm sure plenty of people said he wasn't qualified to be president, but, I don't think that Donald Trump is more qualified to be president than Kamala Harris is, for sure.
Well, he served for 4 years as president.
No, I know. And we can talk about that as well, but I'm simply stating that in 2016, when Donald Trump first ran, he had no qualifications to be president, and he still, became president. And if you think that he ran the country positively in those 4 years, then I think that someone with even more experience still has the capabilities of running for president.
Inflation was at an all-time low. People crossing the border illegally was
inflation. So inflation is actually a really good point. You're absolutely right. Inflation is at an all-time high now. This is a global phenomenon due to COVID impacting our supply chains, and America's recovery post-inflation. America's post-COVID recovery has been comparably better than many of our other European counterparts. This is
again my general issue. Again, Kamala Harris's whole entire campaign has been, and every interview I've watched from her has been Trump's bad. Trump's bad. Question, well, Trump would do it worse. Trump's awful. Trump's bad. COVID. It's COVID's fault. It's COVID and Trump's fault. That's all I've heard from the left the whole last 6 months.
What?
And again, I'm not cherry picking anything. I don't care one way or the other. I just want America to be as well off as possible, right? Like, I don't have a dog in a fight. I'm not a big political guy. I'm not a big Trump guy. I typically don't care one way or the other.
I do think Trump is bad. I think Kamala is bad too. Trump is just worse than Kamala Harris. That's my point.
But why, besides the fact that you champion the left and the left kind of has to have that opinion?
No, I'm not. I don't think the left has to have that opinion. There's plenty of people who yell at me on the liberal side of the political spectrum for not being sufficiently in the tank for Kamala Harris.
I watch. I see it.
But here's the thing, okay? In terms of Donald Trump's like COVID initiatives, I think he did spectacularly fail. We had some of the worst COVID deaths in the entire in comparison to other OECD nations, we had some of the worst death, like COVID fatality numbers overall. But that's not even what I'm going to talk about right now. What I want to go back to is the thing that you were saying about illegal immigrants, because I think it's important. As far as the undocumented migrants being like purposely transported, I think you and I agree that like people can just have the capacity to be misguided or maybe even say some shit that might not be real, right? Like Elon Musk is also certainly susceptible to this sort of misinformation and spreading it.
Yeah,
right?
but again, for why? For what? The motherfucker overpaid for Twitter by like 4 or 5x, got railed on that deal.
Yeah, I mean that was his stupidity.
Yeah, no, but it was at an
Yeah.
attempt to protect the freedom to have a conversation.
No, he actually wanted to buy Twitter. He put forth such a large number that it would be illegal for the executives at Twitter to refuse a sale to him, and then he wanted to pull out of that deal. And the Chamber of Commerce or the courts in Delaware actually forced him to purchase this deal, despite his best efforts to not purchase it at the last second. So he definitely was forced into buying Twitter. Part of the reason why I think he's still maintaining Twitter, even though he's ran it to the ground and the bots are out of control. There's more OnlyFans models per capita in the form of bots promoting their OnlyFans under every, no matter what you're talking about. It could be Israel, Palestine, or not. And there's more like death and destruction on the timeline and more like overt Nazi sentiment being expressed on Twitter than ever before. But ultimately he was forced to buy Twitter, and now he's trying to make the most of it by, trying to change an entire platform to his own desires. It's no different than like Jeff Bezos purchasing Washington Post, right? Like billionaires buy newspapers. Elon Musk is a billionaire. He bought an entire social media platform. But there was never a real, like he never was actually interested in free speech in terms of like why he purchased Twitter. He is actually not abided by the principles of free speech that he claims he believes, even in his purchase of Twitter, regardless.
Do you have an example as to why you've come to that conclusion?
Yeah, there's plenty of examples that I can give you. I think he made saying cisgender into a hate crime on Twitter. So when you say cisgender, your speech is greatly diminished on Twitter, which is like just a normal designation. He considers it to be a slur. He doesn't have that same designation for the N-word or any of the other slurs. Also, he banned one of my friends who's a journalist. His name is Ken Klippenstein. Recently, he banned him because Ken Klippenstein had actually posted a news article that was the opposition research that the Trump administration had conducted on J.D. Vance. Because when campaigns are picking a candidate, like a vice president, they usually will be like, what are the avenues of attack? And this documentation was leaked. Ken Klippenstein posted this document, and he banned him, which is ironic because he also always claimed that Twitter was suppressing information in the last election cycle, including Hunter Biden's laptop.
I can't
He's also banned
numerous.
He's banned numerous accounts over and over again. He banned a flight tracker account for posting publicly available FAA information. He's a petty billionaire who uses his platform as his own plaything.
Why, Hasan? Why do you think? What do you think Elon Musk's agenda is, if not for protecting free speech and having an open dialogue?
Oh, I think he's a right-wing billionaire who wants to win favors. I think there's a couple different reasons. One, I think he has a fragile ego and he wants to be liked. Yeah, I can hear you. What'd you say?
I asked why switch now. He's historically been Democrat his whole life.
Oh,
why switch now? Buy Twitter, ruffle the feathers. Why?
Okay, I think I can't speak to what's in a person's brain, right? Like I can't speak to their personal motivations. Like I will never know 100% what these reasons might be. But I do think
reasonable conclusions based on like people's like agendas, what they do for career.
Yeah. I have an assumption if you want to hear that. if you want to entertain it. My speculation, my suspicion is that he genuinely had his brain broken a little bit from his last like divorce situation plus COVID. I think during COVID, he saw the shutdowns that were happening. He saw that like the California government wasn't playing ball, and he was very upset. He didn't get his way, and I think the litany of lawsuits were piling up, and he got very frustrated. His daughter is trans. One of his 11 children happens to be a trans woman, and he has talked about how she's dead to him now. Like he literally disowned his own daughter. I think that he believes that wokeness caused her to be trans. I think that's probably one of the reasons why that like all of these reasons most likely, all of these reasons likely compiled into him finding himself in the comforts of right-wing attitude. He's also not really a good guy. I think he's always been like kind of a racist guy.
Can I ask you a question just as it pertains to like the left and wokeness and all that stuff? During COVID, during the height of COVID and the height of like the woke, like the whole woke movement, do you think things got out of control and the left got a little bit out of control?
What do you mean the woke movement during COVID?
Just in terms of like how the left would respond to certain ideas or conversations being had in terms of like targeting people and where they work and
I think it's
political opinions they have conversations.
I think that there is a universality of what you're talking about in terms of cancel culture. I think the right does it all the time as well, but it is very annoying when the left does it too. I'm someone who regularly yells about this, and I'm someone who also gets yelled at quite a bit by the left and the right for not having the appropriate standing in whatever issue they're talking about. But ultimately, I think it's a universal principle. Americans love doing cancel culture shit. It's just that the right has better marketing on this issue, so they've just like kind of made it seem like only the left does it, if that's what you're talking about. Because after October 7, when Israel started pummeling Gaza, a bunch of student protesters basically came out with like detailed statements, like student groups. And immediately right after that, you had on college campuses doxing trucks. Like organizations such as like the Canary Mission literally were posterizing students with their photos and their addresses and their names, saying that they were Hamas-loving terrorists for criticizing the state of Israel. Like that kind of stuff, when it's conducted by the right wing, is never seen as like cancel culture or inappropriate. It's only when like woke campus liberals yell at some teacher or woke campus liberals yell at someone when everybody goes, wait, hold on, like the woke leftists have gone out of hand. Republicans do cancel culture initiatives all the time. They cancel Bud Light because Bud Light had like one singular can of beer that was sent to a trans influencer, Dylan Mulvaney, and they their minds. They literally were like blowing up Bud Light beer.
I'm not a big fan of any of that shit. Either way it goes.
Yeah, no, I think it's annoying. I agree. I'm just saying that
I have
there is
another
like
general question. I have another general question for you, like an opinion, like looking for your opinion on America and the trajectory of America and the general like sentiment, morale, the economy, however you'd want to base an answer to this question. Do you think over the last 20 years, America has been at an incline or a decline?
I think America has been at a decline, a genuine decline in the last 20 years, and even longer than that.
Hold on. A noticeable, like massive decline, you'd say.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, Democrats were in charge for the 16 of the past 20 years, if that's what you're going to say. Yes,
that is what I was going to say.
No, I know that that's what you were going to say. I don't know if you know this or not, but I am incredibly critical of the Democratic Party as well for these reasons.
So what do you suggest?
But that decline precedes the, or not the 16, sorry. But that decline.
16. Let me just ask. So if not, Kamala's mantra over the last several months has been change. Obama, who I voted for twice, change. We need change. So this is the change, right? Like 12 of the last 16 years have been, Democrats have been in office, and we've been in a massive decline, as you would agree. So what do you suggest, if not re-electing Trump?
So you voted for Obama twice, you said, right? 2008 was
Correct.
the first time Obama came in office. I don't know if you know this, but something incredibly consequential happened that actually led to America voting for a black man as president. Do you know what happened?
The collapse of the
housing market? Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was done with.
Yeah, it was a terrible time. I remember it vividly.
I know, but these are massively consequential. These are massively consequential things that Republicans had implemented, but it's not even a Republican-Democrat dynamic here. This is like these kinds of broad systemic changes and massive shifts and America's decline predates Barack Obama, predates George W. Bush. I would say
so what do we do then?
I would say that America has not just been on the decline for the past 20 years. I think America's been on the decline for even longer than that, for much longer than that. And I think that is, there is an answer for it. I can explain it to you. It's called neoliberalism. It's deregulation. It is both parties in the United States being completely captive to corporate interests and only taking initiative at the behest of corporations and not necessarily doing things to help the American working class, to help the American economy in general. These are broadly some of the major issues that I see in this country, which is why I'm very critical of the Democratic Party as well as the Republican Party. But I would say that if there's like a singular force that really kickstarted this process, I'd definitely say it's Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan's deregulation that destroyed unions. Bill Clinton with NAFTA also facilitated the demise of American manufacturing, and these are really large issues that both parties have contributed to. It's not like a Democrat versus Republican Party situation. But if we're going to talk about like the differences between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, I'd still say that the Republican Party is almost always the facilitator of America's demise. Like the way I look at it is like the Democrats try to slow the process of destruction a little bit whenever they're in power. They still lean into it, certainly, but the Republicans, when in office, will immediately tank it. They'll spike the football.
Hasan, I only have a couple more minutes, and I really do appreciate you having this conversation with me. Again, never in a million years did I think I'd ever be on your stream under this context. It's kind of funny considering how long we've known each other. I really do appreciate with the cadence that you spoke to me with. You weren't trying to like dunk on me or anything. I don't know, 1% of this world that you exist in. And I'm not jealous of you by any means. This is craziness. What I will say again, as like a general political normie who kind of sits more center than anywhere else, typically doesn't care enough to even get up and vote. Again, the hypocrisy between the border policies and the opinions and stance on like this, like how to protect the southern border, between the way that Kamala Harris has come to even be in the position where she could be elected president, that between the inflation numbers, the border numbers, and just the fact that like I don't know, it's just, again, I don't think things were as bad as you or anyone on the far left would claim that they were during Trump's presidency. I think in our lifetime, it was the only president that sat in office and there were no new wars that were started during his term, right? That's a fact. That's like a
yeah. So the thing about Donald Trump and the no new wars attitude is that Donald Trump oversaw the wars that were inherited from the previous administration, just like Barack Obama oversaw the wars that were inherited from the previous administration.
And I know, listen, Hasan, you're talking like just a normie, your homie who doesn't really...
No, I know. Like, I'm explaining to you what was going on. Donald Trump did a...
This is my biggest thing with that. Can you honestly say, in terms of like a generality, over the last 4 years, have things been better or worse than the previous 4 years in terms of wars globally?
I think
obviously they've been way worse. Obviously, right?
Yes.
Objectively.
No.
Russia, Ukraine,
They have.
Palestine,
The
Israel.
problem is we look to increments of 4 years and we don't think about the broader historical context. We can't place it within the framework of 4 years. Like, for example, I'll give you directly an example of Israel, right? Donald Trump greatly accelerated the conflict in the Middle East, in the region, with a lot of the actions that he took. I'll give you an example of what Donald Trump did that was good, and then I'll give you an example of what Donald Trump did that was really bad in terms of like his foreign policy. Donald Trump's foreign policy on Korea was significantly more to the left, I guess, of the Democratic Party. He said, North Korea and South Korea, you guys are going to get together, you're going to dish it out, right? You're going to talk it out amongst yourselves. I am going to stay out of this. That was objectively a good way to deal with that issue. Having said that, however, in terms of his Middle Eastern policy, because he was getting a shit ton of money from Sheldon Adelson and many other donors, Donald Trump was very, very bad on Israel. One of the things that he did was institute the Abraham Accords, which completely sidestepped the Palestinians and the Palestinian emancipation from the conversation. He moved the American embassy to Jerusalem. This is occupied. East Jerusalem is occupied territory in direct contravention of international law. Donald Trump basically recognized the permanent occupation of Jerusalem, greatly accelerating the conflict in the region. Donald Trump took Obama's Iran denuclearization agreement, which was supposed to stop the Iran nuclear program, which it did successfully, and he cast it aside. He basically said, "F it," right? He threw it out. And then he added additional crippling sanctions to Iran. This escalated tensions in the region greatly. Donald Trump then also looked at another area that was occupied by the state of Israel, Golan Heights. This is technically Syrian territory. Israel was illegally occupying it. Donald Trump recognized Golan Heights as Israeli territory. Basically, not really restraining Israel as we have in the past, even though Israel is our most valuable ally in the Middle East. Every single administration prior to Donald Trump had always demonstrated some level of restraint on Israel. Donald Trump didn't do that. He basically said, go off, kings and queens. All of this led to the tensions heightening in the region, which subsequently led to October 7 happening. So it's not necessarily just Joe Biden who was responsible for this. Joe Biden's responsibility on the matter was to not reverse the decisions of the Trump administration.
I personally don't think Joe Biden's responsible for putting his sneakers on in the morning, to be honest. I don't think he's responsible for really
his
anything,
administration, his cabinet, the people around him, right? Like I said, I don't think Donald Trump is making like all of the decisions either. He is barely literate, right? Like I think he's, he makes some decisions, but overall, a lot of these decisions are handled by some of the professionals that he has in his orbit. And it's the same principle for Joe Biden. Joe Biden is not individually making these decisions. He has people around him that are telling him what the best practices are, and he's just basically putting a signature on everything. That's it. On that front, I think that
in that case,
well, go ahead.
I was going to say, I only have a couple more minutes. Again, thank you for having me, and thank you for talking through this with me. I guess my last question to you would just be, what do you think Trump's agenda is, if not to help make America great, help protect America, help
I think Trump is narcissistic. I think he's just self-interested. He's a rich guy who wanted to utilize the highest office to.
Hasan, how can
you ask
someone like me? I know, but how can you ask someone like me or the average voter to believe that when I think he's quite literally the only president in U.S. history who left the office poorer than when he entered.
Yeah, he's really bad at business. Like it's not even funny. I mean, his net worth. His net worth has always been called into question by all of these institutions that normally look at this sort of thing. But like Trump is a real estate guy. It's the lowest of the low in terms of like a money-making operation.
If he was so self-interested in such a narcissist, why the would he sacrifice and slash his net worth in half? And he's facing hundreds of charges and life imprisonment. And
Well,
being called a
he's
fucking
facing
fascist,
life in
racist,
well, not
a
life
sexist.
imprisonment, but he's facing all those charges because
Trump
he's also incompetent in his
Trump has been
corruption.
Trump has been made out by the left to be literally the worst human being that's ever existed, right next to Adolf Hitler. And
I think there's worse
it's like
American
for
presidents than
why?
Donald Trump. I think George W. Bush is worse than Donald Trump. I think Dick Cheney is worse than Donald Trump. Donald Trump is pretty bad, but I don't think he's the absolute
Or
worst.
would you say Donald Trump has been painted to be worse than George Bush was by the media?
Yeah, I mean,
During his
it
term,
doesn't.
before and after.
They're wrong. I don't care. That's why I'm an
Probably- it
independent.
probably
That's why
doesn't-
I'm a.
it probably-
That's
it
why I'm
probably
an
doesn't-
independent broadcaster. I'm not at CNN. I'm not a part of like liberal media. I don't like when they whitewash the war crimes of former administrations. So I don't really care about like the liberal media narrative overall on this issue because like Donald Trump has done a lot of awful shit when he was in office, and he's advocating for even worse now.
When the general traditional media and the general left goes so far to extend like how bad this person is or how bad they paint him, to which you just agreed, I think
the uniqueness of Donald Trump. You want to know something crazy? I think the uniqueness of the Donald Trump situation is that it was one of the only instances where liberal media, quote unquote, was actually doing adversarial reporting, and that's why a lot of people despised him. If they set the standard for Donald Trump and criticized every single administration with the same severity, I think that you would have the same kind of hatred that I have for most American presidents and most American leadership. That's the only difference. Donald Trump was a unique moment for American media where they actually did normal reporting, where they were like, this is up, this is wrong, when a president did wrong shit, instead of simply hiding it, instead of simply refusing to cover it. Like, for example, Joe Biden's mental faculties, right? You and I both understand that Joe Biden is a decrepit old man. I said this all the way back in 2019 when he wanted to run for office. I said that he was going to be a one-term president if he even won. Okay? I could see it, and many other people could see it as well. But the media rarely ever covered it like that. They actually, as a matter of fact, only covered it in the beginning when he was in a crowded primary. But once it was established that he was the president or he was the Democratic candidate, they stopped talking about his mental faculties. So there is some truth to the way that I would say liberal media certainly omits key details and maybe presents more favorable coverage to Democratic administrations, but they go above and beyond in criticizing them when the Democratic leadership also doesn't follow through on certain right-wing agendas. Like they destroyed him when he pulled out of Afghanistan. That was the right thing to do. That was the correct thing to do. That was the morally correct thing to do. And they yelled at him nonstop for doing the right thing because it went against corporate interests. So overall, the other side of this conversation, of course, is Fox News, which is the most successful news broadcast in this country. It's the most popular news network in this country. And that is unimaginably pro-right. They don't even try to act like they're objective in their coverage. They're openly right-wing. They're openly pro-Trump. So, there is, once again, liberal media that tries to do their very best in quote-unquote objective reporting, but oftentimes they'll omit certain things when, Democratic administrations are doing it under the auspices of being fair and balanced. And then you have Fox News that is super slanted to the right, and they are the most popular news network in the country. And they're openly pro-Trump.
Listen, I hear you. Again, appreciate you for having me in here and talking me through it. I'm definitely not equipped to have a full-blown debate. I definitely know you.
No, I mean, I wasn't trying to have a debate. I was just trying to give you.
No, I know, and I really do appreciate that. Like I said, the cadence and just the type of conversation we had, I really appreciate that because you could have probably took it upon yourself to try to make me look dumb, and I probably sounded dumb regardless in half the shit I said. But at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer in the fact that the average person is the average person, and the average person doesn't spend this much time collecting information and coming to a conclusion. And the average person is probably going to focus on things like no new wars and how many people are crossing the border and how much gas is and what inflation is looking like and the buying power of the dollar.
I don't
and how
disagree with
much
you
milk
on that. I don't disagree with you
costs.
on that at
And
all, which is why I've been, that's my
when these
job.
things are brought up, when these things are brought up in a question and they're asked directly to Kamala Harris, and every single one of her responses is, it's all Trump's fault, it's all COVID's fault. It's really hard. Like, it's just hard for someone like me who, was sitting on the fence prior to not like at least take the shot and the leap of faith with the right and with Donald Trump, because we experienced 4 pretty good years, all things considered, with him when it comes to all these things. In my opinion, like the more important.
I want to leave you with one note. In terms of Donald Trump's border policies, he wants to do mass deportations. He claims that there's 20 million undocumented migrants. I think the correct number, according to the federal government, is around 13 to 15 million undocumented citizens, undocumented migrants living on U.S. borders. The overwhelming majority, if not damn near the entirety of this these group of people are living all around the country. They're our neighbors. They are not committing any crimes whatsoever, as a matter of fact. They are less likely to do crimes than natural-born U.S. citizens. There's plenty of data available for this, by the way. You'll never hear this from the Republicans, and you won't, unfortunately, hear from the Democrats either. But I wanted to leave you with this one note. Remember what I told you? Donald Trump claims that undocumented migrants are killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. Do you want to know what the actual number is in the fiscal year of 2024?
You tell me.
25. Homicides and manslaughter, which means car crashes and whatnot included.
Yeah, I personally have never heard Donald Trump say that, and I if you remember,
or it might be 29 now. Sorry.
I think that the narrative of like the
I listen to him every day.
Yeah, I think that shit's all been wildly blown out of proportion by the right as well. Like I said that earlier in the conversation. It's less about that specifically and more about, again, like the left coming down so hard on the sentiment of building a wall and protecting the border and labeling that as
it's not even necessarily the left, because like I said, the Democratic Party I think is a little bit different than the people who even vote for it.
Generally, the entire left, you're really one of the first people I've heard talk about immigration, illegal immigration, not being a problem and it being under control and it being like, just chill, it's fine.
Well,
like
there's a reason. Well, I'm not on CNN.
On the left that like mass illegal immigration's become such a major issue.
Yeah, because my perspective is completely shut off in most circumstances from mainstream media. That's the difference. That's why I'm an independent content creator. That's why I'm on Twitch. I'm not like the positions that I hold, that I develop out of looking at data, right, is unfortunately not reflected in mainstream media all that much. There are instances here and there where there's objective news coverage on the matter, but it's relegated to the sidelines usually. It's not something that people run on. And I think part of that problem is because the Democratic Party is not running on these issues. They're not actively communicating.
Like I said in my tweet, and I just read someone in chat say Banks is a rich white dude, say less, and it's an unfortunate label to slap on someone like me, because again, historically, especially socially, I've always like leaned Democrat, and I was born in Lowell, Massachusetts being historically, super blue state. I think it was the first state to pass like gay marriage laws, right? One of the first states to decriminalize weed. I grew up really, really poor, really, really broke for the first 22 years of my life, and definitely wasn't considered rich until I was closer to 30 years old. So again, I'm not sure.
No, I think, well, most people don't know what your background is, and I think that they're just like saying that they're just speaking to what you are right now, but it doesn't really matter. Pay no attention to what people say online. People say an unimaginable metric ton of bullshit about me on a regular basis. Some people
don't trust that.
Some people lie specifically. Some people lie specifically. Others, others are just duped by other people who are lying. It doesn't really matter. You just gotta, you gotta stay true to your own personal beliefs. Yeah. So, having said that, it's not like the broader left or anything like that. There are a lot of there are a lot of different opinions in the left, and there's certainly a major difference in opinion amongst, I would say, those who are on the left versus those who are liberals. The Democratic Party being a organization that I routinely criticize, puts me at odds with them as well, and sometimes at odds with mainstream media too. So, but I don't really care about having disagreements with any of those people, as long as I know that where I'm coming from is still based on facts.
Yeah, and listen, I think conversations like this are cool. Definitely more interesting. I've definitely gotten, more drawn to the whole conversation this election. I feel like everybody's kind of under has come to the conclusion that this one's a little bit more important and a little bit heavier than the average one.
Yeah, you think it's the most important election of our lifetime?
It feels that way, right? It feels that way.
Maybe.
In my
I laugh because that's what they say. That's what Democrats say to their base all the time. Every single election, they say this is the most important election of our lifetime, and I guess it is. It always is.
Like a recency bias thing, right? Obviously, it makes sense. It's like this Super Bowl is the biggest Super Bowl ever. This is the best album ever. This is the, you know what I mean? It's always the biggest and the best and the worst.
Yeah.
And
But like I said, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I don't even necessarily fault you for hearing someone that you trust and respect, like Elon Musk, say something and then you don't even think about it. But I would urge you.
I will say this.
I would urge you in the future to fact check it.
To give credit where it's due, you obviously know this. You're labeled as like very far left and oftentimes irrational, unreasonable, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like even in the last election, during the height of COVID, I feel like conversations like this, like I wouldn't care to even step fucking.
I would have had conversations like this. This is the attitude that I always. I match the energy. I match the energy of the person that comes to me. If they are genuinely curious and want to learn or want to have a normal conversation, that's entirely different. If someone like Charlie Kirk comes up, it's going to be different.
Both sides tend to like demonize and kind of inflate like the other side and stuff. And this conversation's been totally reasonable and just chill. And I've definitely gotten some crazy tweets and definitely seen some crazy comments in the chat. But for the most part, people are just interested in the conversation and having a conversation, which I think is healthy. It's definitely a much healthier spot than I feel like we've been in recent time, which is cool.
Yeah. Well, if you have any questions in the future, you can hit me up. Man, I'll
definitely will
help you out.
All right, thank you, Hasan. Thanks, guys, for hearing me.
No problem. All right, bye.
All right, take care.
I'm still phasing the up, and I better get a goddamn face chain out of this.